And here we are to continue our discussion of SASS. In the last video, we set up SASS, we installed it, we ran the watch command here in the terminal. So SASS is now watching our files and compiling our SCSS files every time we make a change, and then we see it here updating in the browser. Right, the update in the browser is not happening from SASS. That's happening because I have the live server running in my code editor. Okay, so anyway, I've got a couple variables here. Let's talk about another feature of SASS. So this time we'll talk about using a for loop. So one of the problems with CSS code is it's not very dry. You tend to repeat yourself. You write the same things over and over again. And you can see I've got a lot of code here where the same thing is repeated, and then again it happens down here, right? So what I want to do here is maybe like all of these 5 blocks here, each one of these represents one of the pedals, right? So what I want to do is I want to make a loop to do this for me, right? To automate the process of writing these, right? And I've created a variable up here called pedals with a number 5, and we'll use that, right? So I can set the number of pedals, and then in the future, if I wanted to add more pedals, maybe I could change this number. We'll kind of keep it simple for now, but we could expand this to do a lot of great automation in our style sheet. So in SASS, you can create a for loop by using for, right? And you count with a variable. I'll count with a variable I, and you set a start number and an end number, so I can count from 1 to 10. Okay. And this loop will start on 1 and count to 9. Okay, so it'll go 1, 2, 10. If you want to include the last number here, you can actually change this to through. So we can say from 1 through 10, and that includes 10. Okay, I actually want to count to number of pedals, right? So I'll put pedals here, and we'll count 5 times, right? Let's do a quick example. So let's imagine you wanted to create, you wanted to set a style for the H1 through 6. We could use 6 here. And what we need to do is we need to output a style. So H, and I need to put the 1 here, right, and give it a style. But actually, I want this number 1 to be the variable I. So the for loop is going to assign to this variable I a value that is equal to the current number of the count that we're on, right? So it'll start at 1, and then I will be 2, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then the loop will end. So I want to take this I and put it here. And if you want to interpolate variables or combine them with something else, you need to use the hashtag and the curly brackets, and then put your variable inside there. So let's imagine I needed to set some styles that were going to style some headings, right? And I wanted all the headings to have a, font size of, let's imagine it's going to be I times, 12, right? 12 pixels, right? And if I look in my style sheet here, you'll see now I have H1 is font size 12, H2 is font size 24, H3 is font size 36, right? So it went up in steps of 12, right? Because I took the I of 1 times 12 and I got 12. I took the I of 2 and multiplied times 12 pixels and I got 24, right? And the same thing went on. This is kind of backwards. I'd really want my H6 to be smaller than the H1. So to do that, we got to do a little bit of math here. Maybe I could do 7 minus I times 12. So if I was 1 and I subtracted 1 from 7, then I'd get 6 times 12, right? Now, mathematically, the computer's going to do the multiplication first, so we'd actually get the wrong number. So what we'll do is we'll wrap this in parentheses, right? So this will say, just like algebra, we'll say do this number first or this math first and then multiply by 12. So now if I do that, you can see I've got 72 for the H1, 60, 48, right? But actually we don't really want to do the H1, but this is, kind of a convenient thing, right? So how would we apply these ideas to what we have here? Okay, and what we have below here is each of the petals gets an animation name, that's petal and the number, and then it gets a background color, and the colors are the same. They're written in HSL, so the colors are the same for these three values, but the first value is the hue. So the first value is 0, 60, 120, 180, 240, right? So they're in steps of 60. So what we'll do is we'll copy this right here, and I'm going to paste it in here like this, right? And what I want to do is I want to include the variable I right here, right? And I forget if I think I got to do the I think I got to do this here, right? Interpolate it, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing right here. So I'll do the hashtag, the curly brackets, $I. So now this should be like child 1 through 6 and petal 1 through 6, right? So now let's calculate the hue. And we can define a new variable inside the loop here. So I'll say hue, colon, to set the value, equals, and I want to count from 0 through, in steps of 60. So what I'll do is I'll say, I minus 1 times 60. And then we can take the hue here and use it in the property there, right? And let's take a look at our style sheet here, right? So I actually have this code doubled up now, right? So here's the first block of code that we wrote in the for loop, and then below it, I guess actually SAS probably filtered out the other code, because I wrote the other code in RGB and HSL, but it converted it to RGBA. So let's go delete these now, right? So I can get rid of all this stuff. Yes, SAS has this thing where I noticed this, like when I use HSL, it converts it to RGBA. So that kind of caught me, but that's what's going on there. So anyway, so there we go, right? So now that actually shortened our code by a whole bunch, right? So my challenge to you is write this section down here with a for loop, okay? I'll cover that later, but you should try it on your own, okay? Give it a try. You can just pause the video and do it and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you figured that out, and if not, we'll go over it right now. So what we'll do is we'll start with a new for loop, and we'll count with a variable. I'll just count with I again, and I'll count from 1, 2, or through the number of petals that we have. And what I want to do is I want to declare a new one of these keyframe blocks. So I'll just copy and paste one of them here. And if we look at these, they're all very similar, right? They have they start at 45 degrees. So the first one is 45. The ending rotation, though, is different. And so if we imagine that all the petals are starting at the top here, that's 45 degrees. So this first one here, if we go all the way around to here, that's 0 degrees, negative 45. So this red one is negative 45, 45. This is, negative 45, 0, 45, 90, 135. Okay, so we got to go in steps of 45, but we have to start here right at negative 45 and then go all the way around. Okay? So what we'll do is we're going to count from 1 to the number of petals. We'll interpolate the variable I here to generate the name, petal-I, right? And then let's calculate the angle. So we'll do angle is, and let's do this. Let's say the angle's going to be I times 45. So that should be 45, what is it, 45, 90, 135, 180, right? You know, so we're basically starting at the 45 here because I is starting at 1, right? We could probably start at like -1, right? Actually, I wonder if that would work, but then we'd have to subtract a couple here. I think what a better idea is to take the I here and then subtract 2. So if our first value is 1 and we subtract 2, it'll be -1. So the first number here is going to be -45 because this will be 1 minus 2 is -1, so that'll be 45. The next value when it's 2, that'll be 2 minus 2 is 0 times 45 is 0, and then we'll have this one, right? And we'll work our way around. So now that we've got our angle, let's plug it in here. And actually, here's a little note, right? I want this angle to have a unit on it of degrees. So actually, I'm going to include 45 here. So we'll do the math. And if I make this number 45 degrees, we'll be multiplying 45 degrees times this value, and then we'll get an angle in degrees. So then I can just replace this whole thing here with angle, right? So let's save that. Oop, I made a mistake there. Let's see. Oh yeah, so this is actually a good point. So if you make a mistake in SASS or there's some error, you'll see an error here, right? And then it'll try and tell you what it is. So it says, oh, it expects a curly brace here somewhere. So I missed something. Oh, you know what? I think I need the semicolon there. And if you save, it'll recompile, and then hopefully everything will go back to normal. It might give you another error and you'll solve that one, and then it'll go back to normal. So anyway, so there we go. Hey, so that looks pretty good. So now let's get rid of all this other code here. And now, you know, here's our finished code in SASS. And there's a few more things you can do here. So you should go through this and see if there's any other place where you can use a for loop or use some math or use some variables, right? So, and you can see I've shortened the code that I have here a lot by using SASS. So that would be one of the advantages of this, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching.